My cat adopted a baby raccoon. That sounds strange, but it really happened. This story takes place in a rural town in Washington state. My name is Jesse. I found the raccoon after a big storm. He was cold, alone, and barely moving. I wasn't sure he'd survive the night. I brought him home. I didn't plan to keep him. I just wanted to help. But then something happened. My cat Juniper, who usually avoids other animals, walked straight up to him. She laid down beside him like he was hers. That's how it started. This video will show you how their bond grew over time, how it confused people, how it tested rules I thought I understood. You'll see moments that were hard to believe, even for me. And it all began with one quiet night, one small raccoon and one cat who decided to care for him. But it didn't stay that simple. The raccoon was maybe 6 weeks old. His eyes were open, but he could barely lift his head. I wrapped him in a towel and placed him near the space heater in my shop. I didn't sleep that night. I kept checking if he was breathing. The next morning, he was still alive. I made a small mix of formula based on what I found online and fed him using a dropper. He was weak, but he swallowed it. That gave me hope. I named him Nico. I didn't mean to get attached, but once you name something, it feels different. Juniper, my cat, noticed him right away. At first, she stared. Then she sniffed him. A few hours later, I saw her lying beside him. She wasn't playing or being curious. She was guarding him. I wasn't sure if that was normal. I'd never seen a cat act that way around another species. But she didn't hiss or walk away. She stayed close. At one point, Nico crawled toward her. She let him. By day 3, he was following her around the room in short bursts. He still couldn't walk well, but he tried to copy her. When she'd stretch or clean herself, he'd try to do the same. It was strange and a little funny to watch. That's when I called Marisol. She's a vet tech and my closest friend. I told her what was happening. She asked me to send videos. She didn't laugh. She said, "I've never seen that before." I also called the wildlife center. Diane, the head there, told me I shouldn't keep the raccoon. "They don't belong in homes," she said. "It's dangerous. It's illegal in some cases." I understood that, but I also knew that sending Nico away now might break something, maybe in him, maybe in Juniper. So I waited, and in the days that followed, the bond between them got stronger. They ate together, slept near each other. Juniper started grooming him, and when I moved Nico to clean his bedding, Juniper would follow and watch like she was making sure I didn't mess up. I kept recording videos. I didn't share them online yet. I just wanted to document what was happening. But each day, the same question got louder in my head. How long can I keep this going? The laws around wildlife are strict, the opinions of others even stricter. But what I saw in my home didn't fit any rule I knew. They weren't just tolerating each other. They had formed something real, and I couldn't explain it yet. The next thing that happened would force me to choose between what was allowed and what felt right. By the second week, Nico was stronger. He was walking better, eating more, and playing. He followed Juniper around constantly. When she jumped onto the windowsill, he tried to climb after her. When she curled up on the couch, he pushed himself into her side. Juniper let him. She started bringing him toys. Not cat toys, her special ones. She dropped one at his feet, backed up, and waited. When he touched it, she chirped. I'd seen her do this once before, when she found an orphaned kitten near our shed 2 years back. That kitten got adopted after 3 days, but this was different. Nico wasn't leaving. I sent more videos to Marisol. This time she called me right after watching them. "You realize this isn't normal, right?" "I know," I said. "But what do I do?" She didn't answer for a while. Then she said, "You need to talk to Diane again." So I did. I brought the videos to the wildlife center and showed Diane everything. She didn't say a word for the first 5 minutes. Then she asked, "You let them sleep together?" I nodded. She leaned back in her chair. "This isn't good, Jesse. Raccoons are wild. He's imprinting." I asked what that meant. "It means," she said, "he might start to think he's a cat, or worse, a human. That's dangerous." I told her I understood, but I also said, "What's the other option? Send him to a center now, after he bonded with her?" She looked tired. "There is no perfect option," she said, "but you can't keep him. You know that." I left feeling torn. I didn't want to break the law, but I didn't want to break what was growing in my home either. Juniper had changed. She was calmer, more alert, more affectionate. I hadn't seen her like this in years. And Nico, He followed her like she was his whole world. If I took him away now, would he survive? Would she go back to being the quiet, distant cat I used to know? I tried to prepare myself. I told myself this wasn't forever, but I didn't believe it. And then that same night, Caleb, my neighbor, came by. He's lived next door for 30 years, a retired ranger. He'd seen a lot of wildlife and a lot of people doing dumb things with it. I thought he'd lecture me. Instead, he just watched Nico and Juniper together for a few minutes, then said, "I've seen raccoons take care of kittens in the wild. Never seen the reverse, but animals surprise you." Then he looked at me and said, "The question is, what are you going to do when they both think they belong together?" I didn't have an answer, and I'd need one soon, because something was about to happen that would force that decision, ready or not. I woke up to the sound of Juniper hissing. It wasn't her normal hiss, it was louder, sharper, protective. When I got to the living room, Nico was wobbling in circles. He kept falling over like he couldn't balance. His pupils looked off. Juniper was pacing around him, her back arched. I picked him up. He didn't resist, but he wasn't responding either. His body felt too warm. I called Marisol. She said, "Bring him in, now." At the clinic, she checked him over. Fever, dehydration, possible infection, but she didn't know what caused it. Could be something he was born with, she said, or something that hit fast. His immune system isn't strong. She kept him overnight. When I got home, Juniper went room to room looking for him. She cried. I hadn't heard that sound from her since she was a kitten herself. She sat by the door most of the night. The next day, I picked Nico up. He was tired but better. And when we walked through the front door, Juniper ran straight to him. She didn't leave his side for hours. But then came the call from Diane. "I need you to come in," she said. "We have a situation." At the center, she showed me something I wasn't ready for. A report had been filed. Someone had seen one of my videos, one I sent privately to Marisol, and she had forwarded to a colleague. That colleague shared it, and it made its way to a local wildlife forum. Now, the state wildlife department wanted answers. They knew about Nico. They knew he was still with me. "You're not being charged," Diane said, "yet, but they're coming to inspect. You need to figure out what you're doing, and quickly." I sat there, quiet. She looked at me, not unkindly. "You're not the first person to care too much, but sometimes caring makes things worse." I went home with a knot in my chest. Nico was eating better now. He was stable. He slept tucked against Juniper like nothing had changed, but everything had. Now, I wasn't just dealing with instincts and emotions. I was dealing with laws. And someone was watching. I thought back to what Caleb said. What are you going to do when they both think they belong together? I didn't know, but now the clock was ticking. I had two animals who thought they were family, and a system that said they couldn't be. And then that night, Juniper did something she'd never done before. She brought Nico a dead mouse, dropped it in front of him, then backed away. She was teaching him, which meant she wasn't playing anymore. She believed he was hers. And the question was no longer, can I keep him? It was now, what happens if I don't? After the report, I started watching everything I did. No more videos, no more sharing. I even unplugged the trail cam by the window. But inside the house, nothing changed for them. Juniper was now treating Nico like her own. She started grooming him constantly. She even let him eat from her bowl, which she'd never done with any animal before. Not even me. And Nico, he followed her rules. If she walked away, he paused. If she meowed, he looked for meaning. He didn't understand the words, but he understood her. Marisol came by to check on them. She crouched low and watched them play. He copies everything she does, she said. I know. She didn't say it out loud, but I could feel her holding back. She was proud of them. She was worried for me. You're not sleeping, she said, because I don't know what happens next. She nodded. I get it. The next day, Caleb walked over. He brought a bag of cat food and set it on my porch. Why the gift? I asked. He shrugged. You'll need it. Feeding two now. Then he added, if they come knocking, don't lie. Just tell them what you saw. Nothing else. That's what they can't argue with. Diane wasn't so relaxed. She called again. They've scheduled the visit. 3 days from now. What do I need to do? Be ready for them to say Nico has to leave. I didn't answer. They're not monsters, she said. They care about animals, but they also care about precedent. Then maybe this needs to be a new precedent. Silence. Just be smart, Jesse. The night before the inspection, I sat in the living room with both of them. Juniper was curled around Nico on the couch. He was making that little clicking noise raccoons do when they're happy, almost like laughter. I couldn't stop thinking about how fast it had all happened. 3 weeks ago, I didn't even know raccoons could bond with cats. Now I was being asked to tear them apart. I started recording a voice memo. I didn't plan to share it. It just helped me think. I said, if someone asked me to explain this, I'd show them this room. A cat, a raccoon, both asleep, one protecting the other. No fear, no confusion, just trust. If that's not worth something, then what is? That night, I put Nico's crate near my bed. I didn't sleep much. Juniper stayed beside him the whole time. Her tail curled through the bars, like she was guarding him from something none of us could see. And I wondered, would she forgive me if I let him go? The inspection team arrived on a Wednesday morning. 2 officers, 1 clipboard, no small talk. They didn't ask to see Juniper, just Nico. I showed them the room where he usually stayed, clean bedding, toys, water and food bowls side by side with Juniper's. Nico sat calmly in the corner, chewing on a cardboard box. Juniper was perched near the window, watching closely. The officers didn't say much. They took photos, asked questions, wrote everything down. Has the animal been outside freely? No. Has it shown aggression? No. Are you aware of the state wildlife code regarding raccoons in private homes? Yes. They nodded. We'll be in touch. The whole thing took 14 minutes. When they left, Juniper jumped down from the window and walked straight to Nico. She nudged him gently, then walked away, like she was saying, it's over, for now. But it wasn't. That night, a woman I didn't know knocked on my door. She introduced herself as Karen Holtz, local wildlife activist. I saw the videos, she said. Someone forwarded them to me. I haven't shared anything. Well, someone did, and now they're making rounds. Facebook, Reddit, even a small local blog. I froze. She kept talking. Some people think it's heartwarming, others think you're endangering both animals. I asked, and you? She paused. I think it's complicated, but either way, the story's out. By the next morning, I had 3 messages on my phone. One from a news producer, one from a wildlife rescue group in Oregon, one from someone just asking if Juniper and Nico were available for content licensing. I ignored all of them. I drove to the shelter where I volunteer. I needed normal. Diane pulled me aside. She looked tired. You've got a decision to make, she said. The story's not going to stay quiet. I didn't ask for this. I know, but now that it's out, people are going to twist it. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. When I got home, there was a note on my front gate, written in black marker, you can't keep him. Wild means wild. Juniper was on the porch when I opened the door. She looked at me, then at Nico, who ran to her the second he heard my voice. I picked him up. He wrapped his small hands around my wrist and rested his chin there. That night, I sat at the table and opened my laptop. I started writing an email to the state wildlife office. I wasn't sure what I was going to say yet. All I knew was, this wasn't just my decision anymore. Too many eyes were watching, too many rules, too many opinions. But in my home, none of that made sense. What I had was a cat, a raccoon, and a question no one could agree on. When does care stop being love and start being a problem? That night, I didn't write the email. I stared at the screen, hands hovering over the keyboard. Every word I thought of sounded like a step toward goodbye. So I closed the laptop. Instead, I made tea and sat by the window. Juniper jumped into my lap. Nico followed, crawling up beside her. The 3 of us sat there in the quiet for nearly an hour. That was the first time I asked myself out loud, am I helping them or just helping myself? Marisol called the next day. She didn't ask how I was. She just said, you've got 3 choices. Okay, I said. 1, you turn him in. 2, you ask for a special exemption. 3, you vanish and keep him underground. I'm not doing the 3rd. I didn't think so. And the 1st, silence. I knew she agreed. It didn't feel right. But the 2nd option meant opening myself up, making a case, accepting whatever answer came back. Think it through, she said. Caleb came by later with a bag of food. Storm's coming, he said. Thought I'd save you a trip. He didn't stay long, but before he left, he said, whatever you decide, make sure you can live with it 5 years from now. That night, Juniper refused her dinner. She paced around the house, tail low. Nico stayed close to her. When she finally lay down, he crawled up and curled into her chest. I watched them from the hallway, unseen. And I thought, what happens to him if she stops eating because he's gone? The next morning, I made a call to Diane. I want to try for the exemption, I said, but I'm not making promises. You understand the odds? Yes. You'll have to show that you're capable of giving him species-appropriate care, that you're not treating him like a pet. I know. And Juniper? She's part of the case, I said, whether they like it or not. We set a date. I had 10 days to prepare. 10 days to prove that what they had was real and that it wasn't harming either of them. I started documenting everything, how they interacted, how they communicated. I made notes, took videos, recorded behavior logs, cleaned every inch of the house. But under all of it was the same quiet fear. What if they still say no? One evening, while I was cleaning their space, Nico walked over and dropped something at my feet. A button from my old flannel shirt. He must have pulled it off days ago. He looked up at me, waiting. I didn't know what he wanted. Juniper came over, looked at the button, then at me. She gave one short meow. Then they both walked away. And I stood there, button in hand, wondering if love had rules I didn't understand. Day 6 of the 10-day prep window. I had just finished cleaning the living room when I realized the house was too quiet. No pause steps, no scratching, no clicking, just silence. I checked Juniper's usual spot by the window, empty. Nico's blanket pile in the corner, also empty. I called out, Juniper, nothing. Then louder, Nico, still nothing. My stomach dropped. I searched the house, closets, under beds, behind the dryer, nothing. The front door was locked, windows were shut, no signs of escape. Panic started to build. I went outside. It was early evening. Wind picking up, trees swaying. I circled the house, flashlight in hand. No prints, no sign of animals pushing through. Back inside, I sat on the stairs trying to think. And then I heard a faint scratching inside the walls. I moved to the living room and pressed my ear to the drywall near the baseboard heater. More scratching. Then a meow, muffled but clear. Somehow, they had gotten inside the wall. I grabbed my tools and unscrewed the vent. There they were, both of them. Wedged in the small crawl space behind the heater, Nico pressed tight against Juniper. I reached in. Juniper came out first. Nico followed. No injuries, just scared. I called Marisol. Why would they do that? I asked. Maybe they heard something outside. Maybe she was trying to protect him. But from what? We checked the cameras the next day. At 3:08 a.m., motion triggered a recording by the shed. A truck pulled up, unmarked, headlights off. Someone got out, walked toward the house, stood by the back door for a full minute, then walked away. No attempt to break in, just standing there. Then the truck drove off. We couldn't see the plates. I called Caleb. You think it was someone from wildlife enforcement? Maybe, he said. Or maybe just someone who read too much online. That same day, the local blog ran an article titled, "The Man Who's Raising a Wild Raccoon Like a House Pet, Hero or Threat." The article included photos I never gave them. Someone had leaked them. The story wasn't just a story anymore, it was a target. I emailed Diane. Do I need to pull out of the exemption process? Her reply came quick. No. If anything, this makes it more urgent, but be careful and document everything. That night, I placed Juniper and Nico's bedding inside a large crate and brought it into my bedroom, just to be safe. When I turned out the light, I saw Juniper already curled up in the corner of the crate. Nico followed her in and rested his head on her stomach, and I whispered to no one, "What are we doing, guys?" Because I didn't know anymore who this fight was really against. Was it the law? Was it the people? Or was it time? The next few days passed in a strange rhythm. I kept the crate in my bedroom. Every night, Juniper and Nico curled up together inside it. Every morning, I'd open the door and find them already awake, waiting. Juniper had changed. She wasn't just protective anymore. She was leading him. She taught Nico how to paw open the cabinet door under the sink, how to climb onto the window ledge using the curtain hem. Once, she even showed him how to use the litter box. He didn't quite get it, but he tried. He started grooming her back now. Clumsy and slow, but careful. It felt like a partnership, a quiet one. One night, Caleb and I sat on the porch. I told him about the man at the back door. He didn't say much, just looked out toward the tree line and said, "People are funny. They'll fight you harder for breaking a rule than for breaking a promise." Then he added, "But I think you promised something to both of them." He wasn't wrong. Marisol came by later that week. She sat on the floor with Nico for almost an hour. He climbed into her lap twice. On the second time, he fell asleep. "I think I was wrong," she said. "About what?" "About how temporary this would be. I thought this was a phase. But he thinks this is home." "So do I." She didn't push back. Instead, she said, "You know this is going to hurt, no matter how it ends." "I know." We stayed quiet for a long time. The next day, I got a message from Diane. The review board wanted an early presentation. 2 days earlier than planned. "They've been watching the online story," she said. "They want to get ahead of it before it spreads more." I asked what I needed. She sent a list. Documented feeding schedule, veterinary reports, behavioral notes, species separation plan, emergency exit strategy. I had most of it. But one thing stood out: evidence that the animal can develop healthy species-appropriate behaviors. That was the one thing I couldn't prove. Because Nico didn't act like a wild raccoon. He followed Juniper. He cleaned himself like a cat. He played like a cat. He even started chirping when she meowed, like he was trying to talk back. It was beautiful. It was confusing. It was everything the board didn't want. That night, I filmed them playing. Juniper chased a toy mouse across the rug. Nico ran after her. Not the toy, just her. At the end, they both rolled onto their backs and swatted at each other's paws. When the camera stopped, I just sat there watching them. And I realized I'd changed too. I wasn't looking at him like a temporary guest anymore. He was Nico. Not the raccoon, not the wild animal, just Nico. And somehow, that was both the most honest and most dangerous thing I could say. 2 days before the scheduled review, I received the letter. The exemption was denied. No explanation, no appeal, just a decision. Final. A formal removal order would follow. 72 hours. That was the window. I spent that entire day documenting everything. Not for social media, not for sympathy, just to remember. Juniper and Nico still behaved as if nothing had changed. She groomed him. He followed her everywhere. They rested in the same spots, shared meals, mirrored routines. I recorded it all in silence. Behind the scenes, things moved quickly. I started receiving unmarked notes in the mailbox. One warned me, one threatened me, one told me what I already knew, that this story was no longer just mine. Other people had picked sides. I didn't reply. I didn't share. I shut everything down. Messages, cameras, updates. Offers began to surface from people who wanted to help or hide or solve it in their own way. I didn't answer them. Not yet. I researched legal options. There weren't any that would hold. The law was written clearly. Raccoons were wild, and wild meant removal. I thought about moving him across state lines. I had connections, quiet places, trusted hands. It was possible, but it wouldn't fix the root of it. It would just bury it. At home, Juniper became more alert. She stayed near Nico at all times. She began sleeping in front of doors, following me when I moved him, even for short periods. She had sensed the shift before I did. Her posture changed. She was no longer just nurturing, she was guarding. I tracked the clock. 48 hours, then 24. I packed a bag for Nico, formula, toys, bedding, medical notes. I packed one for Juniper too, in case I needed to move quickly. I didn't know which way this would go. Everything was ready. Still, I hadn't made the final decision. That night, I stayed up with them. No lights, no noise, just breathing. At one point, Nico reached for her paw while he slept. She didn't move away. I considered the weight of every option. If I surrendered him, the bond would be broken. If I kept him, the law would catch up. If I ran, I'd lose control of the story and possibly everything else. None of it felt like protection. None of it felt like peace. Time passed. I didn't sleep. By morning, I had written a short note and sealed it inside an envelope. I placed it by the front door, just in case. Then I sat down and waited for someone to tell me what happened next. The official order arrived just after sunrise. Plain envelope, state seal, 1 page. It listed a pickup window, a handler's name, and the phrase "subject to compliance check." I placed the letter on the counter without reading it again. Outside, the sky was overcast, the kind that makes the house feel smaller. I moved through each room, checking corners, packing small items, clearing surfaces. I wasn't sure if I was preparing for visitors or for an exit. Maybe both. Nico sensed the change. He didn't play that morning. He stayed near Juniper, quiet, still. She was no different, always watching, always within reach of him. At one point, she sat between him and the front door and didn't move for nearly an hour. I placed their crate by the window. Both of them went in without prompting. It had become a safe space, even when open. They lay down together side by side. At midday, I unplugged the house cameras, deleted the backups, cleared the footage I'd kept for evidence. There was nothing left to explain, no more cases to make. News had spread wider by then. The blog post had become a trending thread. Photos pulled from old clips now had headlines attached, stories written without context. Some said it was cute, some said it was criminal. Most said nothing helpful at all. My phone buzzed, but I ignored it. The neighbors knew. A few avoided eye contact. One left a small envelope on my porch with cash inside and no note. Another passed by slowly in his truck but didn't stop. Everything felt like a line had been drawn, and everyone had picked a side. At some point, I looked around and realized something else. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a place I'd borrowed. I loaded the last of the supplies into the truck bed, just in case I needed to drive that night. I left the engine off, keys in the visor, bags packed, fuel tank full. Inside, I sat on the floor next to the crate. Neither of them moved when I opened the door. Nico reached a paw out toward me but stayed curled around Juniper. I didn't touch them. I just sat there. Outside, a government vehicle pulled up and parked near the gate. It stayed there for 5 minutes. No one came out. No knock, no footsteps. Then it left. They hadn't come for him. Not yet. I didn't relax. That night, I placed the sealed envelope on top of the crate. If someone came when I wasn't home, it would be the only explanation left. Inside was the truth. No videos, no defenses, just a short handwritten line. He stayed because she chose him. I let them teach each other what family means. The next day passed without incident. No call, no knock, no car in the driveway. Still, I knew what was coming. Every movement in the house slowed down. Meals became silent. Tasks were mechanical. Juniper's pace changed too, less playful, more watchful. She stayed within 2 feet of Nico at all times. When he wandered toward the back door, she cut him off gently and redirected him to the center of the room. She had taken over. Whatever energy I once had to guide or protect was now coming from her. I marked the hours. At 4 p.m. we would pass the 72-hour mark. I reviewed the law again, looking for gaps. There weren't any. The deadline wasn't flexible. The only flexibility was in enforcement. I opened the front gate, left it unlocked. I wasn't preparing for them anymore. I was preparing for the moment after. That morning, Juniper refused food again. Nico sniffed at his bowl but didn't eat either. They both slept through the early part of the day. When they woke, they didn't leave the crate. It was like they understood. I didn't take them out. I didn't call anyone. I didn't text for advice. There was no more input to gather. At 3 p.m., I placed Nico's travel crate by the door, lined with fresh bedding, familiar toys, a blanket that smelled like Juniper. I didn't move him into it. Juniper curled around him again. At 3:30 p.m., the wind picked up outside. No rain, just movement, trees shaking, loose leaves tapping the windows. At 3:40, a black SUV passed the property. It didn't slow down. At 3:45, the power flickered once and came back. At 3:50, a neighbor's dog barked once, then silence. At 3:55, I stood by the window and watched the road. No cars. At 4 p.m. exactly, I checked the driveway one last time. Still nothing. No call, no visit, no removal. I left the crate by the door. I didn't move them. I didn't speak. Juniper and Nico stayed inside their shared space, quiet and unmoving, together. Whatever was going to happen next wouldn't come from them. They had done everything they could. Now it was my turn to decide what kind of ending this would be. I walked outside. The air was cold, the trees still, nothing in the sky, the kind of stillness that doesn't settle, it just waits. I stood at the edge of the yard and stared into the distance until I couldn't see anything but the outline of trees. Then I turned around and walked back inside. The moment had passed, the clock had run out, and yet they were still here. No sirens, no enforcement, no warning, just silence. I sat down next to the crate. Neither of them looked at me. Nico pressed himself deeper into her fur. Juniper blinked once, then closed her eyes. We were still together. But now everything that came next would be outside of my control. The morning after the deadline, I loaded the truck. I didn't wait for a knock or a letter. I didn't need one. The decision had already been made, in a quiet way, without force. but silence can still speak clearly. Nico stayed in his crate. I didn't use a latch. He didn't try to leave. Juniper followed me out to the porch, but stopped at the edge. She sat there, tail wrapped around her feet, eyes fixed on me. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. The drive took 3 hours, back roads only, no signs, no destination on paper. The man who met me didn't ask questions. He opened the gate, pointed to a small structure off to the side, then stepped away. I carried the crate inside. It was clean, warm, and quiet. I placed the blanket down, opened the crate, waited. Nico stayed put at first, then stepped out slowly. His steps were uncertain, but he didn't look scared. He walked the room, sniffed corners, and circled back toward me. He didn't climb up, he didn't chirp, he just sat beside me. I stayed for 20 minutes. Then I stood. He didn't follow. That's when I knew he would be okay. Not right away, not without confusion, but eventually. I drove home in silence. When I opened the front door, Juniper was waiting. She searched behind me, checked the porch, then sat still. I didn't try to explain. She wandered the house for hours that night. She checked every corner, every spot Nico used to nap, every toy pile. Then she sat by the crate and didn't move. By morning, she ate a little, drank some water, then went to the windowsill and stayed there most of the day. She didn't return to the crate. I kept things quiet for a week. No updates, no news, no contact from anyone official. The world outside moved on. But inside the house, something had changed. I kept his blanket, folded it, placed it in a drawer. I didn't delete the videos. Juniper started sleeping at the edge of my bed again, something she hadn't done in weeks. Eventually, she stopped searching. I didn't. I checked in once, quietly, no names, no messages, just confirmation that he was still there, still adjusting, eating, playing. He had started climbing trees, and he had stopped waiting at the door. That was the answer. This wasn't a story about rescue. It wasn't about law or rules or even species. It was about a window in time, brief, strange, honest, where care existed outside of definition. And letting go wasn't the end. It was part of the shape that love took. I still walk past the crate sometimes and expect to hear that chirping sound. It doesn't come. The house is quieter now, but not empty. Something of him stayed. Juniper returned to her old rhythms. She eats, sleeps, watches the yard, but she's different, slower to trust anyone else, quicker to sit beside me without being asked. Her independence remains, but there's softness in it now, like she remembers too. I never tried to replace him, didn't bring home another animal, didn't fill the space he left with noise. Some things aren't meant to be replaced. Some moments only happen once. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had fought harder, or given up sooner, or if the story had stayed small, inside our walls, without the outside world pushing in. But then I remember it happened exactly how it had to. Nico didn't belong to me. He didn't even belong to Juniper. But for a short time we belonged to each other, and that was enough. People still message me. Some ask what happened. Some offer advice. Some want the ending to be neater. They want proof that it was either wrong or right, legal or illegal, wild or tame. But it wasn't any of those things. It was just real. And real things rarely stay inside the lines. I haven't shared new photos, haven't posted videos, I don't plan to. What they had, what we all had, wasn't for public reaction. It was for the moments in between. The early mornings, the quiet naps, the way Nico would reach for Juniper's paw when he was scared. The way she never pulled away. I keep one video saved on my phone. It's nothing dramatic, just them, curled together on the rug, breathing in sync. I watch it sometimes, not to feel sad, just to remember that it happened. I didn't expect this story. I didn't want the attention. I didn't want the choice it forced me to make. But I'm glad I saw what I saw. I'm glad I let them show me something I wouldn't have believed otherwise. A cat and a raccoon. Not enemies, not strangers, not confused, just family, not forever, but real all the same. And if you've watched this far, I hope that's what you take with you, not the rules, not the headline, just the reminder. Connection doesn't always follow the blueprint. Sometimes it rewrites it, sometimes it changes you. And if it does, you don't forget. Thank you for watching. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to reflect on connection, on care, and on the quiet ways animals remind us how to be human. Subscribe for more true stories like this one. And if you've ever experienced something like it, you're not alone.